What Gennadiy Golovkin did to this unfortunate opponent will leave you speechless. In the noble art of boxing, it has always been clear that a barking dog seldom bites. In other words, fighters who loudly boast about how they will crush their opponents tend to fail spectacularly. In today's video, you'll witness a striking example of this statement as we relive the night when Gennadiy Golovkin struck fear into Curtis Stevens. I advise discretion. The footage you're about to see is not for the faint-hearted. The event. On the night of November 2nd, 2013, the boxing world witnessed a drama that fans will likely remember for decades. Two individuals stepped into the ring, not only with different fighting styles but also vastly contrasting temperaments. In one corner stood the master of the ring, Gennadiy Golovkin. In the other, a provocative American opponent, Curtis Stevens. What made this fight historic wasn't just the high expectations surrounding it, which it ultimately surpassed. It was the personal drama that unfolded before millions of viewers that elevated this bout to another level. Stevens, who will always be remembered for his lack of discipline and general life aptitude, stirred up controversy on social media before the fight. Together with his friends, accomplices in the act, he posed in a photo staging an improvised funeral for Gennadiy. As if the scene wasn't already blatant enough, Stevens made the cyber attack even more direct by captioning the image with, "Rest in peace, Triple G. You were a good guy." What some less skilled fighters might have taken as an intimidating threat, for Golovkin it was the last straw. After seeing what Stevens had done, Golovkin made it clear to him and the world that all boundaries had been crossed. Stevens, raised on the tough streets of Brooklyn, had no intention of stopping there. At the pre-fight press conference, the American fighter didn't miss any opportunity he created to hurl a barrage of provocations at Golovkin. Once again, Stevens showed little concern for crossing the line of acceptable behavior. Although his bold words elicited mixed reactions from those present, Golovkin displayed the poise of a true pugilist by remaining untouched by the insults and prejudices hurled at his name and career. Instead of stooping to his opponent's level, Golovkin reaffirmed his position, responding calmly only when strictly necessary. Surely he understood that, in the noble art of boxing, words don't define superiority. However, following these repeated incidents fueled by Stevens' ignorance, it became evident that their bout in the ring would be more than just a title fight. It would be a clash between two different worlds, two completely opposing philosophies. And it became clear that these fighters were destined to follow entirely different paths. After all the controversy, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Gennadiy Golovkin entered the arena not only calm but also laser-focused on achieving the objectives set for that day. Number 1. Punish Stevens cleanly for all the audacity he had spewed before the fight. Number 2. Prevent a cocky fighter from even having the chance to feel like he could beat someone of Golovkin's caliber. As the camera followed him, capturing his face, the immense confidence he had in himself was unmistakable as he faced what was about to happen. Amazingly, the support of his fans, who idolized him, perfectly matched his energy. And despite spotting some familiar faces in the crowd, his eyes never lost focus on the tough task ahead. On the other hand, Curtis Stevens stunned everyone by choosing loud, aggressive music for his entrance. But what else could one expect from him? This was the perfect reflection of his daring attitude and pre-fight behavior. With his head held high, moving energetically to the rhythm of the music, Stevens took steps toward his own downfall. There was no doubt that once again, the American was only trying to intimidate his opponent before the real fight began. When the two fighters were finally locked in the ring, the tension reached its peak. Golovkin and Stevens met in the center of the ring for the customary final instructions. Their gazes searched each other for any sign of weakness or fear, but neither showed any. At that moment, all the trash talk and provocations were abruptly left behind. It was time for action. The punches of the stronger fighter would have the final say. Fight recap. From the start of the fight, the tension was palpable. Both fighters moved to the center of the ring, displaying their unwavering determination to move forward. Without rushing to attack step by step, they demonstrated their fury.
So I do not expect a premature stoppage tonight.
Curtis Stevens.
Well, Triple G is doing a good job starting out.
Himself had a pretty good amateur background.
Very quick fighter.
Golovkin lands a rights up and focusing on defense. Now he tries a big shot and landing to see Golovkin backing away from a guy, but he respects Stevens' power. And good left hook.
In the second round, the intensity of the fight began to rise with punches flying left and right. Stevens, known for his aggressive style, landed several heavy hooks on Golovkin.
Has already stalled Golovkin's normal early rounds attack.
And Stevens landed a left.
but Gennadiy quickly responded, matching his intensity.
Expecting something big to land.
And the threat of that almost beat Kovalev. Lost a very
Well, other than the threat that a healthy
was the last time we saw it.
The climax of the round came when Golovkin landed a devastating left hook that sent Stevens crashing to the canvas.
is the left hook there. Golovkin. Good left hook by Golovkin.
The American got back up, but his terrified expression drew laughter from the audience. Golovkin lunged forward, attempting to finish the fight early, but the bell gave Stevens the chance to survive for another round.
Bang, Stevens into the ropes. 10 seconds to go in the round. Body shot. Looking upstairs. Misses her right hand. Wobbles Stevens with it. One more round.
In the subsequent rounds, the fighters didn't slow down. Both engaged in spectacular exchanges of blows. Golovkin continued landing hook after hook, maintaining a high level of intensity, while Stevens, despite a few successes, couldn't gain any significant advantage.
Showed Stevens all night that his hook was just as good or better than Stevenson's.
Let's go now as Golovkin jabs him into position in the corner, throws a right cross, gets in a left.
Barely holding on with his back frequently hitting the ropes, Stevens was clearly falling behind. Cornered in the ring, Stevens no longer resembled the brash fighter from the pre-fight provocations. As the fight progressed, Golovkin only continued to dominate. His relentless offense reached a breaking point, forcing the American not only to retreat, but to avoid direct confrontation at all costs. It seemed that on this night, the only thing resting in peace in the ring was Stevens' fighting spirit.
Partially blocked both of them.
Possibility of a counter shot.
Doesn't
Right
want to
hand
trade.
over the top by Golovkin.
There it was.
Body shot.
Aside from landing a few body shots, Stevens' performance was truly disappointing, painful to watch. At times, Golovkin succeeded in severely hurting Stevens. More often than not, Stevens was completely disarmed. It became clear that no matter the progression of the rounds, Gennadiy was constantly seeking the knockout. But would he achieve it?
If you watch this, incredibly accurate guy. He just keeps coming forward like a machine, and he's beaten up.
Third round just to clear his head after the second round knockdown.
Of course, of course.
It's pinned against the ropes. And now Stevens erupts with two good clean shots. And knocks Golovkin. Another body shot for Golovkin, this with the right hand. He's got Stevens' hand. Golovkin lands an uppercut. Golovkin knocking him. And the left hook. Golovkin trying to measure.
By the 8th round, one thing was undeniable. Stevens was on the brink of defeat. Seeing that their fighter lacked the ability to respond to the repeated punishment dealt by Gennadiy, Stevens' team decided not to send him out for the 9th round.
Curtis' left eye starting to close from the
Physical abuse.
Yeah, but Stevens in the last minute.
Oh, good left uppercut by Golovkin.
Golovkin keeps it.
And Stevens backs up into the ropes again. He might have hurt him with that pressure. Hard right cross. It looks like if we get a knockout by Golovkin, it's going to be the submission of will variety.
I see Curtis breaking down physically.
Tremendous left. Incipient beatdown, whipping Curtis Stevens into the corner.
This decision stopped the fight and prevented Golovkin from inflicting unnecessary additional damage. After all, there was no chance whatsoever for Stevens to stage a comeback and miraculously claim victory. The American Clown's final act was denying Golovkin the satisfaction of a knockout win. However, Stevens must have felt some twisted sense of accomplishment by enduring 8 rounds of agony before surrendering out of fear of further punishment. Price Saw. Conclusion. This victory marked the 28th in Gennadiy's career. It not only earned him widespread recognition for the dramatic spectacle of dismantling the American, but he was also rewarded with a purse of $400,000. What a cherry on top of the cake. A cake that Curtis Stevens didn't even get close to tasting. Although the American walked away with $290,000, he likely had little left after covering the medical bills for his post-fight injuries. This fight not only solidified Golovkin's position as one of the greatest fighters of his time, but also served as a valuable lesson to anyone thinking of disrespecting or challenging his professionalism. If you've made it this far, thank you. Remember, the best way to support my content is by leaving a like and commenting below. Do you think Curtis Stevens ever had a real chance of beating Gennadiy Golovkin, or was he just a big mouth whose skills never matched his words? Share your thoughts in the comments. I hope to see you in the next video. It was the year 2015 and a rising star was shining on the horizon. You could only know of him by the trail of destruction he left in his wake. For those who saw him approach, he appeared to be a true monster sent from Kazakhstan. As his popularity rose, even the best middleweight fighters were fearful of facing him, afraid to tarnish their professional records. Still, few thought Gennadiy Golovkin could truly be a challenge once he reached those leagues featured on television. And, like every good warrior, Golovkin knew he had to prove it with actions, not words. Thus, after all the uproar the topic stirred in the community, an opponent was confirmed on July 26th, David Lemieux. Welcome. In today's video, we'll relive one of the harshest moments in the Canadian's professional career when Gennadiy Golovkin left him bloodied and unsteady. I advise caution. The images you're about to see are not for the faint of heart. Content. The Canadian was not just another step in Golovkin's ascent to glory. By the time they faced each other, his professional record boasted 34 wins, 31 of them by the hard route of knockout. This history served as proof of the fearsome punching power he was credited with. Even so, Golovkin already held an undisputed reign among middleweights with significant victories. Yet, in retrospect, none of his previous opponents could be considered a true test. So, when the Canadian knockout artist was announced as his opponent, it was seen as the toughest challenge Golovkin had faced at the time. Before the fight, Lemieux appeared very self-assured, unafraid to tell anyone who asked how he would dethrone Golovkin without difficulty. Meanwhile, Golovkin knew it was wise to let his fists speak louder than words and avoided any kind of verbal provocation towards his opponent. Despite his cocky attitude, pre-fight odds showed little confidence in Lemieux. With a 7-1 probability, Golovkin was the overwhelming favorite. However, this would not be the most discouraging prediction we'd see. Beyond that, David would have to prove he had the determination to swim against the tide. After all, anything is possible in the ring. The only certainty surrounding this bout was that it would be a contest etched into the modern chapters of boxing's golden history. Lemieux entered the ring composed without showing any hint of fear at the challenge that would soon confront him from the opposite corner. New York's great Madison Square Garden was ready to witness another historic moment in the sport. With Steve Willis as the third man in the ring, the fight began. The fight round 1. After the sound of the bell, Golovkin demonstrated great skill in taking control of the center of the ring. Listening to the crowd chant his name, he kept Lemieux fighting at his limit. Lemieux showed great audacity in attempting to penetrate Golovkin's guard, but without any success. Still at the center of the ring, both took turns momentarily as the aggressor of the match. In the final minute, Lemieux faced real tension when Golovkin landed a pair of powerful punches that repeatedly sent him crashing against the ropes. Round 2, Golovkin's relentless left hand broke the ice in the second round. In the center of the ring, the fighters exchanged punches to claim control over the pace of the fight. Lemieux's combinations began to take prominence, while Golovkin patiently waited for his chance to strike. When it came, Lemieux had no choice but to start backing up. With blows aimed at his head, Golovkin countered every bit of Lemieux's momentum. During the last 30 seconds, a punishing combination sent the Canadian's back crashing against the ropes and forced him to raise his guard to avoid serious injury. Round 3, Lemieux opened the third round with sharp body combinations. Using his waist movements, he tried to dodge Golovkin's relentless counterattacks. By mid-round, his efforts seemed to wane, as Golovkin pushed him up against the ropes. 2 minutes in, Golovkin landed a solid left uppercut that sent the Canadian's head back. Out of pure survival instinct, Lemieux clung to Golovkin's body. Once Willis separated them, Lemieux tried to keep Golovkin at a distance by working with his left hand. Still, he closed the round by taking a brutal left hook directly to the face. Round 4, Lemieux attempted to start the 4th round aggressively, but in the center of the ring, he clashed with Golovkin's merciless offense. Realizing he couldn't subdue him, the Canadian again tried to clinch. Lemieux's left hand actively sought Golovkin's chin, but he seemed unable to reach it. Meanwhile, Golovkin paved his way to victory with short combinations aimed at Lemieux's head.
Watch your head.
At 1 minute and 40 seconds, a deadly hook crashed into the Canadian's face, shocking everyone in the arena. Now against the ropes, Lemieux raised his guard, managing to slip to the side. Nevertheless, he was cornered and this time pummeled by a barrage of punishing blows. The Canadian seemed defenseless, waiting to be saved by the bell. Round 5, Madison Square Garden opened the 5th round, chanting Golovkin's name. Meanwhile, Golovkin pushed the Canadian against the ropes. Lemieux continued his lateral movements, trying to avoid facing his inevitable end. Still, Golovkin stayed close, like a true predator, landing power punches along the way. Entering the last 30 seconds of the round, Lemieux had only the ropes behind him and chose to cover his head, bracing for the blow of a titan. After slipping sideways, he backed into the center of the ring and dropped to one knee, seeming to bow before the monarch who had already subdued him. With both gloves on the canvas, Willis began the safety count to give the Canadian a chance to rise with honor and continue fighting. What appeared to be a surrender amid agony paused at the count of 8 when Lemieux got up. With just 3 more seconds, Lemieux was charged and cornered where the bell was not enough to save him. Fortunately, Willis jumped in between them, allowing Lemieux to walk back to his corner. Round 6, Lemieux hadn't even advanced to the center of the ring when, in the 6th round, he was met with the blows of a ruthless Golovkin. Within mere seconds, he was trapped against the ropes, resorting to clinching as a survival tactic. Occasionally, Lemieux extended his left hand to reaffirm his stance as a fighter. Otherwise, he was little more than a moving punching bag for Golovkin to strike at will. Missing most of his counterattacks, the physical and mental strain was beginning to show on the Canadian. Meanwhile, Golovkin's power punches were becoming ever more precise. Round 7. Golovkin had tired of playing and entered the 7th round to finish the fight. He focused his repeated attacks on Lemieux's head until Willis called for a timeout so the ring doctor could assess the Canadian's injuries.
Hey, time! Come here, David. Come here. Doctor!
Lemieux's nose was like a fountain, blood covering his face. After a brief evaluation, he was allowed to continue. But now, Golovkin had a clear target for his infamous fists. Lemieux's vulnerability had been exposed, and like any beast, the scent of blood only drew Golovkin in further. Round 8. The conclusion of this brutal encounter came in the 8th round. Golovkin left his corner with a more methodical approach. He stayed close to the Canadian, who was now throwing his last punches like desperate, drowning kicks. When Golovkin's left hand started crashing into Lemieux's body, the countdown began. Golovkin cornered Lemieux against the ropes, launching a series of attacks that Willis interrupted. In a desperate attempt to escape sideways, Lemieux staggered and nearly fell to the canvas. It was clear he didn't have the strength to stay on his feet. For this reason, Willis stopped the fight. At 1 minute and 32 seconds, Gennadiy Golovkin defeated David Lemieux by technical knockout. Closing. If you made it this far, thank you. Remember, there's no better way to support my content than by leaving a like on the video. What was your favorite moment of this fight? What other Gennadiy Golovkin fight would you like me to feature on the channel? Let me know in the comments.